All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to the last session of our GeoPython week. I believe every one of us have, at one point or the other, learned something from Monday up to this time. Today, we are going to be having a session on seismic Facies prediction using convolutional neural networks. And it's going to be very interesting because our instructor for today has a power-packed presentation for us. Seismic Facies interpretation is one very crucial part of the oil and gas business chain, especially in the exploration. Properly identifying and mapping specific and interesting facies is also very, very important. And the procedure for this is what we need to put in place and get correctly. Human interpretation of an entire 3D seismic survey can take several weeks of days and even months. With available data sets, machine learning integrated approach will help us to speed up this procedure and help our interpretation workflow while providing accurate interpretations alongside the human interpreter. And today, we are presenting to you Mr. Olawale Ibrahim to take us on this topic for today. Thank you very much. You're welcome, Olawale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. thank you, Mr. Yan, and good day, everyone. And yeah, thanks for joining in this last session for the day. So today I'll be taking. Okay, my name is Olawale Ibrahim, and I'm a machine learning and Python developer. I'm currently with TechPets Global as a digital solutions engineer. So today we'll be looking at seismic Facies inter. Okay, before I go into that, okay, today we'll be looking at seismic Facies predictions using convolutional neural networks. And then before I go into that, if there are any questions, maybe mid during the presentation or during the coding section, you can just ask me that using this link over here, and then using this link on the page. So I'm going to go to my presentation now. All right, everyone, you're welcome once again. So like I said, we'll be looking at seismic Facies prediction using convolutional neural networks. As the moderator has said, he has kind of explained what we are trying to do with convolutional neural networks. So convolutional neural networks are a kind of machine learning algorithms that is used for making predictions mainly on image data. So like we said, we could have seismic data, and during our interpretation, we are trying to map some specific facies, which is we are interested in, which could help us to explore for oil and gas exploration. So for my presentation will be taking long. We'll just be looking at some of these things before going into the code aspects. So we'll be looking at neural networks, what neural networks are, and then convolutional neural networks, a specific type of neural networks. And then looking at image segmentation, be looking at different types of image segmentation problems and how we can use machine learning for that. And also seismic facies, different type of seismic facies we have and what they are actually. And then the unit model architecture, which is a model architecture for image segmentation problem, which we'll be using for our code. So over here, okay, let me just minimize this. Over here, we have neural networks. So neural networks are just a type of machine learning algorithm, just like many other machine learning algorithms, which we have classical machine learning, we have random forest, we have even linear regression and things like that. So neural networks are just a type of machine learning algorithms, and they are very, okay, they try to imitate the human brain. They try to model how the human brain works in making prediction and training and learning from data. So they are mainly composed of neurons. So, and these neurons, they kind of sound like neurons in the human brain, such that each neuron is a kind of processing node, which is mainly like a kind of mathematical operation, which is going on to process and find pattern in data. And also they have neural links which connect, which try to imitate the human neural links in the brain, which kind of process and transfer information from one neuron to the other. So we also have different types of neural networks. We have the artificial neural networks, which is referred to as the ANNs. So these ones are mainly used for like regression problems, classification problems, things like that. And they're very good for working with text or tabular data. So you can just have some set of inputs, and then we're trying to predict some certain outputs. So the way artificial neural network works, okay, the next slide, I'll be showing the model architecture for a typical artificial neural network. So we also have convolutional neural networks, which we'll be kind of looking at extensively in today's webinar. So convolutional neural networks are mainly used for solving image problems. So they work using convolutions. So these convolutional neural networks, they have convolutional layers which try to extract meaningful features from image data. We also have we have recurrent neural networks, RNNs, which are also a type of neural networks, but they are specifically used for solving sequence problems such as speech recognition, working with text data, time series analysis, and things like that. Things that follow a particular sequence. They could also be used for solving some subsurface problem. Subsurface data we have. Yeah, we have most times is kind of sequence form. For example, we are trying to predict lithology change from one depth or from one formation to another. And also we also have long short-term memory LSTMs, which is a kind of step up of recurrent neural networks. Just that the main difference between long short-term memory networks compared to recurrent neural networks is such that they have a memory function such that they can hold information for a longer time compared to the normal RNNs. So over here we have a typical, give me a minute to do this. So over here we have a fully connected artificial neural network. So over here we have the input layer. Like you said, it could be used for a classification. For example, we are trying to solve a classification problem whereby we are trying to predict, for example, we are trying to predict either shale or sandstone. So we have the input layer. We could be taking several logs as input, several different logs. For example, the gamma ray log, neutron porosity, density logs, and then we are sending this input into the own neural network, and then we are trying to predict the output. So we have the output layer, we have the input layer, and then we have the hidden layers. So the hidden layers are kind of like the main parts that makes neural network all there. So the hidden layer consists of different neurons and also different layers. Yeah, so the hidden layers have different neurons and also they have different layers. So these layers, they're composed of different neurons which act like it's kind of processing nodes. So they're usually mathematical functions, like could be the ReLU activation function, could be the tanh, Sanch, or sigmod activation function, which help a neural network to process and find pattern in a data. And the way neural networks work is just that they make use of, for example, in a supervised machine learning workflow whereby you have the labels, you have the inputs, and then you're trying to train your model. So by passing in your input into the network, the network kinds of lengths from it based on the activation functions and also the weights of the neural networks. And then based on the labels which you have, it tries to compare the weights and then the predictions which you've made, and then tries to estimate the loss, and then it back propagates this loss back to the network such that the weights and the neurons they learn from this mistake and try to improve subsequent predictions. So over here we have convolutional neural network. Like I said, a convolutional neural network, CNNs, they are specifically designed for image recognition. So they're also a type of convolutional neural networks. And compared to ANNs, where ANN made use of neurons, convolutional neural networks are composed of three main layers or four main layers. Let's say that the input layer, which is the image which are passing into the network, and then the convolutional layers. So the convolutional layers are really what makes some CNNs what they are. So in the next slides, we'll be looking at these layers in full. And also we have the polling layers, which are also types of layers in a convolutional network, and fully connected layers. So before we go into the model architecture, that is the different layers in a CNN. Let's just look at images. So like we said, CNNs are mainly used for solving image classification problems. And then we could have images in just two main types of formats. That is the grayscale image, whereby we have images in just black and white. And also we have the colored images, where we have images coming in different colors. All right, so okay, for example, okay, over here for the grayscale images, you can see an image actually is a representation. An image can be represented by an array of numbers. For example, grayscale images have just one. They have just one color channel, so they're just black and white. So we refer to it as just a single color channel. While colored images have three channels, which is the RGB, the red and green and blue. But looking at the grayscale image, you can see each, for example, this image, I think we have, though forgive me, my slide is not very sharp, but over here we have a picture, an image of Abraham Lincoln, and each pixel in this image has a specific number attached to it. So we have the values of a particular grayscale image ranging from 0 to 255, where zero has a pixel value of black pixels have a value of 0, while white pixels have a value of 255, and then the variations in between changes like that. So over here we can see some of the values for these images. The white values the white pixels, actually they have values of about 255, high values like that, while the black pixels have values of zeros and ones like that. But comparing it to colored images, like I said, colored images have three red channels. So if, for example, if this was a colored image and we are looking at a single pixel, so each pixel has different representation of this RGB colors. So over here we have CNS filters. So CNN filters, this is just referring to the ways in which convolutional neural networks learn from image data. Convolution, we have this equation here describing what a convolution is. So say for example, we have an input image and we are trying to find information, trying to find patterns that could help us predict possible feature images from this. We have possible feature images using convolutional neural network. So we have an input image, and then we are trying to perform some convolutions on it such that we are trying to extract the meaningful features and information from it. So make use of convolution. So for example, like I said, an image is represented by, give me a minute. All right, so okay. For example, we have an input image, like I said previously. An image could be represented by a matrix of number. For example, let me go back to my previous slide. Over here we have an image represented by a matrix of a matrix, actually, left and right. So now, for example, we have this image called F, a 3 by 3 sized image with each values in this image, with each pixel in this image having a particular value. So for example, let's say we are working with a black and white image, and then we're trying to find features, we're trying to find useful information on this image, and making use of convolution. So we have a convolution max, something we call could be a max or filter, which is going to be used to extract information from this particular image. So a max is also just like a matrix of values, which is going to be convolved, which will be convolved all over the image to get features and patterns from it. So the way convolutional neural networks work, that's convolutional layer works, is by making use of convolution, by convolving a particular max, a specific max on an image, that's an image or matrix. We are trying to get information and features from that. So say for example, we have this image, a 6 by 6 image, and then we have this max. So this max is going to be mapped all over this image, such that we are extracting feature maps from this particular image. And we have different maps for extracting different features. So for example, this is a particular max over here, or a filter, which will be convolved over this image. Say for example, we are trying to find different patterns. For example, we are trying to get information on the corners or the edges on a particular image. So this mask could have been designed for doing that particular task. And again, we could also be trying to find some more features, like maybe we are trying to get maybe the like low-level features from an image. You could design the different marks for doing that. But in Python and in machine learning, actually, there are a lot of already written codes for handling all these things. So we are just looking at the way convolutional neural networks actually work. So like we said, we have filters which are used for getting information and patterns on a particular image. So I took these images from the internet online, and then so like I was saying before, we have feature maps. So feature maps are what we get when we use CNN filters to get information on a particular image. Let's look at an example here of feature map extractions from images. For example, we have this image which are passing into our CNN, and for the convolutional layer, this image passes through it. And then, like I said, we have different features. We have different filters which are going to try to extract different information, that is different feature maps from this particular image. So like I said, there are different filters for different works. Over here we have filters for low-level feature. So it could just be general information on that particular image, like general information, maybe like the colors or things that is more general. And also mid-level features, which could be looking at some specifics, like for example, you could see an example, you're looking at the tires, trying to get information on the tires and such, that when we are trying to predict on a future image. So if we are getting a kind of information like this, we can be able to detect if that image or that input is a car or something like that. And also we have high-level features looking at more specific things. Like over here, we can now start seeing some more specific things that is looking more like the input image itself. So that's what feature maps refers to. So over here we have a typical CNN, a CNN model. So we have the input layer, which is the image. So over here, I think this is an image of a car, and like we can see here, this is a colored image actually. So the image is made up of 224 by 224 pixel size. So that's the pixel size of the image. And over here we can see the color channel. Like I said, colored images have three color channels. So they're made up of different compositions of red, green, and blue. So by passing this particular image into the neural network, for example, the first convolutional layer, the first convolutional layer actually has 64 filters. So we are getting 64 different feature maps. Like I said, these there are different filters for doing different things. So by passing this particular image into the convolutional neural networks, we are extracting 64 different feature maps. That is, could be different things like this. This over here represents a particular feature map, and why this represents the another feature map on this. So we are extracting 64 different feature maps from this from our input, and these feature maps are actually what makes our neural networks, our CNN, to learn from the images. So the feature maps are just information on a particular image. And like I said prior, we also have pooling layers in a CNN. So what pooling layers refers to is that we are trying to downsample an image. And what that means is that, for example, like over here we have an image size of 224 by 224. That is the pixel size, 224 by 224. Then by downsampling, that means we are trying to reduce the spatial dimension, that is the spatial distribution of this image, so that we are focusing on more specific features. So pooling layers are actually very useful for getting more information on an image by downsampling it, and also by eliminating noise from the spatial distribution of image. So over here we have the first layer, which is the convolutional layer, which tries to extract different feature maps from an image. And then in the next, over here we can see that this image has been reduced to 112 by 112. So this red blocks over here is the max pooling layers, which samples the images. And then we can also see the convolutional layer has also been applied to this image, such that we are now having 128 feature maps now. And as we proceed, we keep getting the same operations being performed for this particular CNN model. So yeah, the fully connected layers just like we have in an artificial neural network where we have the nodes, and then we have the activation function which helps the models to learn. So after having all these convolutions, max pooling layers, so that we are trying to get information on a particular image. We also have the fully connected layer, which kind of help us to process our outputs into actual outputs which we want. And also we also have the softmax. So the softmax is just an activation actually. So for example, in the case where we are trying to classify more than two objects, like we are dealing with a classification problem that involves more than a multi-class classification object. Is the softmax activation function is actually what is used. So like I said, we have different activation functions for different purposes. Hidden layers mainly use the images of the ReLU activation function, which is used along with the convolutional blocks and the max pooling blocks. So the softmax activation function is actually used at the end of the neural network. So it kind of outputs the results of all information which we've got in form of probabilities of the class outputs. So over here we are just looking at just what we mentioned previously. We have the input layer, we have the convolution, and then the ReLU activation function. If there are any questions, we could just drop it in the Mentimeter link. I'll look at it after this presentation. Thank you. So we have a typical CNN model. We have the input layer, we have the convolutional layer at each block. We have the polling layers, and also we have the fully connected layers, and also the softmax layer, which outputs the probabilities of the training process or the predictions actually. So over here we just have, like I said, we have the feature learning. So we are creating different feature maps from the initial input image, and then over here is just to get the correct classification. Okay, so we also have image segmentation. Like I said, CNNs are mainly used for CNNs are mainly used for working with image classification problems. So image classification problems could come in two forms: semantic segmentation and instance segmentation. So let me just make use of this example over here. So right here we have an image we can see from this image you have a number of balloons. Same thing with this other image over here. But for this particular image, now, our neural network, or we've been able to classify that we have balloons in this image. That is the pixel size, the pixels. We could classify these pixels into balloons and non-balloon pixels. So right here we have balloons, and then so this is just like a binary classification. So we are trying to classify the pixels in these images into balloons, the balloon portion parts, and then the parts that are not corresponding to balloon. So this is usually referred to as the semantic segmentation image classification problem. Why over here, why we are still having balloons, we can see that the model has kind of separated each balloon in this particular picture. Why everything is still balloons, but we are seeing that the model has been able to separate a particular balloon from a different balloon. So this is referred to as the instance segmentation, and it could also be used like object recognition. So for example, you have an image, and you're trying to detect the different objects present in that particular image. So it might not be balloons, it might be different things, different objects. So this is referred to as the instance segmentation and typical object recognition problem. So in this particular, for the Facies classification, we'll be looking at making of the semantic segmentation, because that's I think that's the way seismic data is. We are trying to actually classify different Facies and not individual Facies as different things. So yeah, we have seismic Facies. So before we go into seismic Facies are just, they refer to geological or depositional structures in the seismic survey. Might be 2D or 3D survey. So they could include structures such as faults, salt domes, channels, bright spot, and structures that could help us identify oil and gas prospect, and help the seismic interpretation workflow properly. So we also have different types of seismic facies. We have transparent, chaotic, linear shingles from seismic survey like that. So like I said, we have the unit model architecture. So this is what, the unit model architecture is actually a CNN model architecture that is mainly used for image segmentation problem. So it's actually composed of convolutional layers, max pooling layers, and then also the it's just composed mainly of convolutional and max pooling layers. So the reason why it's called a unit is so that it has, because of the shape of the model. So this particular architecture can be divided into two sections. So we have the contracting part, and we also have the expansive part. So let's just look at this particular example. It's quite similar to what we explained previously in the previous slides. For example, we have an image input. So over here, what we are trying to do is we are trying to learn from a particular image, get information from a particular image to train our model. So over here we have an architecture which is used for training on images. So we have, for the input layer, we have an image which we are passing. We have an, please give me minutes to just, all right. Okay, over here we have the image. We have the first layer, that is the convolutional layer, and then we are passing an image into the convolutional layer. We have an image of 120 by 120 pixel size, and then the color channel is just one. So in this case, we are dealing with a black and a grayscale image actually. So by passing this image into the first convolutional block, so let's just take this structure so that we have different blocks. So for this particular block, we have a convolutional layer, so that we are passing this one channel image, this black and white image, into this convolutional layer, and then we're extracting 32 feature maps. We are getting 32 different feature maps from this particular block, and then we downsample this particular image. So when we downsample, we are producing the spatial composition so that the network can learn properly from it, and then can focus on more specific and more important features. So we can sample it from the initial 128 by 128 to 64 by 64. And then, so this is the second block. So over here, we have the contracting part. So the contracting part is just trying to, is also referred to as the encoding part. So we're trying to encode the information. We're trying to encode the information from the image. We're trying to encode information from the image into feature maps. So we also have the another layer, another block, which downsamples the images and also extract more feature maps. So from the initial 32 feature maps, it has been double such that we now have 32 more feature maps from the initial one. So we now have new 64 feature maps from this image. So same thing with the next block, like that, we downsample, contracting this image, the image dimensions, getting more information on it, creating more feature maps, so that we got the contracting part up to this point. So after contracting the image, like we said, in a neural network, you're passing a supervised neural network, you're passing information, you're passing data into this structure, so that your model, so that your model can learn from this, your network can learn from these images. So after encoding this information, then we're also trying to decode this information, because over here now we now have the dimension has been reduced to about 16, but we need this the dimension has been reduced to 16, and also we have about 256 feature maps. So we need to decode. So we are trying to, for the decoding part now, which is the expansive part over here, we are trying to get these features which will be extracted. We are trying to get them back to like a predicted image, to a predicted image. So we have this decoding part, so that it upsamples this feature maps which we've created, those 256 feature maps which have been extracted from the image. We're trying to upsample it back into the first into a single image, that is a single channel. So over here we have the exact opposite of what we have on the left hand side. So we have that's happening over here. So we are trying to, so now we are decoding, we've encoded the information, and now we are trying to decode. So like previously, the way we use the polling layers, the way we made use of the polling layers to downsample the image, we also make use of different type of polling layers in this parts to upsample the images, and also to upsample the images. Sorry. Okay. So that's what this other part is doing. Please give me a minute to take my through this kind of try to take water. All right. Yeah. Sorry about that break. I had to take a glass of water. So right here we have so we just have the unit model architecture, which is used for many image segmentation problems. So okay, in this particular webinar, we'll be looking at sort segmentation. So we're trying to find regions in the seismic survey, seismic data that corresponds to sort regions, and like sort regions, that is subdomes at potential hydrocarbon yeah, prospects storage which could exploit hydrocarbon from. So we're looking at how we can identify salts from seismic images, and when we get to that, I'll give more information on that. So over here we have a particular example from, okay, there was this hackathon some few weeks back where we are trying to get different seismic facies from, that is, yeah, we are trying to denote, identify different seismic facies, 6 different seismic facies from seismic volumes. So we'll also look at this when we get to that section. But for this particular webinar tutorial, we're looking at sort segmentation, making use of convolutional neural networks, and especially the unit model architecture, which we just discussed. So let's get started with that. All right, so I'll check on the Mentimeter page now to see if they're okay. So there are a couple of questions here. I can say, I think everyone could also see that. How do I get started with machine learning? Machine learning as a geologist. Okay, why that does not relate to this tutorial right now. I think the way you could do that is by starting with picking a programming language, mainly Python, and then from there you learn the basics of a programming language, and then you can move into the machine learning part. Maybe after this webinar, I could share a post on how to properly navigate that. But if there are questions regarding this particular webinar, that is CNN's seismic, we could do well to attend. Yeah, we'll do well to attend to this in this webinar. Okay, so okay, all right. So okay, just keep the questions coming in. Sorry about that. So we also have, do I need mathematical prowess to understand machine learning? Actually, if you ask me, I'll say you don't need a lot of in-depth mathematical knowledge. Just need the basics. So, and actually this mathematical knowledge and things like that has actually been abstracted into the codes by the developers. So you actually don't need to code to write the a lot of functions, that is equations, to be able to use machine learning softwares actually. So you really don't need a lot, but having knowledge of mathematics and how it works will give you understanding of how these machine learning algorithms work. All right, so over here I have a question. Is extracting feature maps a step in feature engineering? So I could say yes, this is a kind of step in feature engineering. So yeah, it is also a feature engineering step. Yeah, exactly. So let me mark that as answered. So what other architectures do we have aside the unit architecture from CNN? So like I said, the unit architecture is actually very common, a very popular model architecture for image segmentation problem, but we don't only have the unit architecture. So the reason why the unit is mainly used such that the way it works, it kind of encodes the information from the images, and then it decodes it back. So it's really is like a very good it's a very good architecture for image segmentation problem. But like we in CNS, we also have, well, I think we have different architecture. We have the linear architecture, and this architecture they make use of some specific encoding techniques. So I think, yeah, the other architectures, and you just check that online actually. Okay, can you bring the whole seismic section to the code instead of bits and pieces? Okay, I don't know if this, I understand, I get what this person is trying to say, but can you bring the whole seismic section? So I think the person is probably talking about getting the, maybe for example, a 3D volume, the lines and X lines to the code instead of bits. I really don't understand this question, please. I would like if you could shed more light on this, especially the section to the code. I don't get that. So please, can you ask that question again with more information so I could attend to that? Thank you. All right. All right. So we're going to the notebook section of this course, of this webinar. Sorry. So over here we have this tutorial is is from 2018 TGS Cargo Salt Identification Challenge. So in 2018 TGS yeah, they made an open source competition whereby they consulted, should I say they consulted data science community to kind of provide solutions, machine learning solutions to identifying salt regions from seismic image patches. So the way they, okay, let's just go to that particular competition and see and get more information from it. So okay, over here, this is the particular competition. So they are trying to get seismic salt. They're trying to detect and find salt regions in a particular seismic image patches, that is 3D volume. So the way it worked was that they would have extracted the seismic patches, that is the 2D seismic patches from a old seismic survey, and then you feed those images into a machine learning model to identify which regions corresponds to salt and which regions does not correspond to salt. Like we said, I think salt regions actually are hydrocarbon. They could also hydrocarbon due to the way the structures are. So okay. So yeah, so they provided some set of images which is used to train the models, and there's some set of images, the test images that we are trying to predict and find salt regions, from it. So about 4,000 image patches, seismic patches. I think we'll look at the visualizations of that very soon. And also, I think I need to mention that a majority of this code was extracted from one of the starter notebooks from the competition by KGT and that was surveyed with some modifications here and there. So we'll be looking at this code and how it was done, how we can make use of. So the unit or model architecture was used for training this model, which is a CNN. This is actually a CNN model. So we'll be looking at all these things which we've mentioned: how to load the data, how to prepare the data, training the unit model, and saving this trained model so that we can now use this trained model on a different seismic 3D volume, and then making predictions and then visualizing our predictions to see how the predictions are, how good, accurate our predictions are. So while we're looking at importing the required library, so making use of some of these libraries, the US libraries which will be used to read our data from the memory, from the system location, the system libraries, and every other library like that, NumPy, Matplotlib for visualizations, and TQDM to monitor the progress of maybe when we are training or when we are resizing the images, and every other. Okay, so we'll also be making use of Keras. So Keras is a deep learning framework in Python, which is used for deep learning works. So making use of Keras in this particular workflow to train our models, our deep learning model. So after importing these libraries which we'll be using, so now we are going to display some of the image image and max patches. Okay, I think I kind of missed forgot to mention that. So this particular workflow is a supervised machine learning workflow, so that we have inputs images, we have images, and then we have the labels. So the labels are referred to as the marks. So let me just output this particular cell to explain what we're trying to do. So over here we can see some outputs. In this line of code, we have some IDs. Like I said, 4,000 image training data images were provided, and their corresponding marks. So over here we just have some of the names of those images, which is on my system, my current system, and then those images. Okay, I think before that, I think this particular tutorial, this notebook is available on GitHub. I don't know if the link is in the YouTube if the link is in the YouTube description, but after this webinar, if it is not, it will be added and uploaded to that to the description section. So like I said, there are 4,000 different there are 4,000 training images and their corresponding marks. So the marks just refers to as the labels, the regions that correspond to marks, that corresponds to sort or no sort. So the dark patches in this, okay, for example, we have this particular file name which corresponds to this image over here, this seismic image patch over here, and then the corresponding marks. So the regions where we have the image patches, the image patch, and then the corresponding seismic, the corresponding marks, which is indicating regions of salt and regions of no salt. So the dark patches indicate portions of no salt in these images, while these parts, the white parts indicates portions of salt, regions of salt. Same thing with every other example here. So we have two pairs actually, the seismic image patch, and then the corresponding marks indicating regions of salt and no salt. So this is a typical binary classification. So that we are trying to classify regions. So in our test images, we are just having this. So in our test images, we are just having the seismic image patches actually, and we are not having this. We are not having the labels. We are not having the labels, that is to know which part corresponds to salt or no salt. So for this for the training data itself, I think it must have been extracted from a 3D seismic volume. At the end of this notebook, we'll be looking at how we could extract our own image patches from the seismic volume. But for the competition, the image patches were provided, and then the corresponding marks were provided to train the models. So these image patches must have been extracted, and then human interpreters, maybe with the aid of softwares, they must have created this marks from these image patches, so that you can have something to train the models on. And also they could also be adjusted and corrected and things like that. And like we know, interpreting this thing manually, trying to map out sorts in a particular 3D volume, which can be very large and take a lot of months to do. So I think where machine learning comes is such that we're trying to automate this process. Yeah, we're trying to automate this process, so we don't always have to label. The human interpreters don't always have to label this to find the regions of salt or map it completely by themselves. So we can make use of machine learning to do something like this. So like I said, this image and marks patches have been provided, and we can see from the example the black regions. Even from the seismic images, we can also see it from ourselves that this part is not like the parts corresponding to the salt regions, and that is not corresponding to it. They actually have different, should I call it different textures? Why the salt parts kind of look some smooth on the seismic patch, and then the non-salt parts is having some kind of, should I call it reflections? Yeah. So from just visualizing this, we could see what we are working with and how the salt regions should look like. So we have this set of training. So we just displayed a few of it. That is just five of these examples, making use of their IDs. So these seismic patches have IDs attributed to them, and they've been saved to a folder called train. So we have the images having all the train. We have a folder called images having all the seismic patches, and then another folder called marks having their corresponding marks. So yeah, the data could be downloaded from the homepage, the competition homepage. So it could be downloaded from this. So we just have the data just about 460 megabytes. So going back to our notebook. So okay, after we've been able to visualize some of these samples, and now we're trying to load the data from our memory. Like I said, we have the parts where all the I would have shared my file explorer, but I think Zoom does not allow. Okay, let's just proceed. We've been able to see some of the examples actually. And like I said, we have 4,000 training images and we have 18,000 test images which are trying to generate their corresponding marks, which was not provided and which was actually the main aim of the competition. So we have the part to the training images and the marks, and also the part to the test images. And then we make use of these two lines of codes to get the IDs. That is like, just like we have it over here, we're trying to get the IDs of all the training images and the marks and the test images like that. So we're trying to get this marks so that we can load our data, the IDs, so we can load our data with the provided IDs. After that, we are just checking the length just to confirm if you're actually working with 4,000 training images and then 18,000 test images. And then over here, we just have some of these samples. So these images, they're actually saved in .png format. They could also be saved in JPEG format or any other format, any other image format actually. Like I said, these images, okay, let's scroll back. From this particular example, like I said, these images are their pixel size is 101 by 101 by 101. For this particular workflow, we'll be resizing the images to 64 by 64. So we're kind of trying to downsample these image sizes so that it can be easier to work with. And then the image channel, like I said, is just black and white. So we just have a single color channel, which is referred to as the image channel over here. So we're making use of these variables which we've defined to either prepare our data set and also to train the machine learning model. Like I said, we are trying to downsample this image size from 101 pixel size to 64 by 64 pixel size. So we are creating empty arrays to hold these resized training images. So we are making use of numpy zeros to do that. So is that when we are trying to resize, we are just adding this the resized images into these arrays. So we have the arrays as 400. So we've been able to create an empty arrays that is for the images. Okay, over here we have two variables. Sorry about that. We have two variables, the X string and then the Y string. So the X string is actually referring to as the images. Like after we've loaded it's referring to as the image data itself, that's the 4,000 image data. And then the size, like we said, we want it to have an pixel height of 64, pixel width of 64 also. And then this length is just defined as the total number of the images which are loading from the system. So over here we could see that is denoted as integers. Y for the Y train. So the Y train is actually, let me just label. So the Y train is the labels, or we can call it the marks, and Y the X train is the actual image input, that is the seismic patches. That's the inputs. So let's just keep that in mind. We have the training images as X train, and then the Y train as the labels or the marks. Like I said, it's a typical classification challenge. And from the image patches, which we've seen, you can see that we just have black and white. That is for the marks. We just have regions of black and white. So it's a binary classification, just black and white. That is sort or no sort. That is just like we have something like yes or no. So in this particular Y train, which we are saving as variables, we are making use of this D type called mp.boolean. So our image patches, our marks actually will be having values of either zeros or one, that is true or false. So we are denoting these empty arrays as a boolean array. So now let's just extract one of the empty arrays which we've created. So we are trying to extract the first one just to get just to see what we've created. Like I said, we've created an empty arrays to hold the resized images, and then we can just see that it's made up of made up of zeros. So when we load our data into these arrays, we are actually getting the actual pixel values and not these zeros. So this is just like an empty space to hold our images. And from this particular example, so this is just like one of the images which is still empty at the moment. You can just check the shape. So it's having 64 by 64 pixel dimensions and just one image channel. So it's a grayscale image. So it's supposed to have just one channel. So at the beginning, we are working with colored images. This color channel, which should have a value of 3. And over here, we just have the corresponding max, which is on Y3, or let's call it 1. Y3. So we can see that it just made you just have values of false. Like we said, I think maybe everyone should know that in Python we have values having a number of 0 have Boolean values of false, and then values of 1 have Boolean values of true. I think we could just check that. Remember, we create empty arrays of zeros, but because we made use of this the type as Boolean, that's what we have in this as false. So checking the Boolean value of 0, you can see that is referring to that we got the Boolean value of false. While for 1, we should get the Boolean value of true. So that was why we saved our training, our max as either yes or no. So anywhere in the max where we have a value of 1, which is indicating, like I said previously, anywhere we have a value of 1 in our image, in our max is going to be called true. So in that particular portion, we have salt, and then anywhere where we have a value of false, which is actually 0, we don't have salt in that region. So that's why we save the data in this particular format. And then also checking the shape should have the same shape as the corresponding input image, which is 64 by 64. Like I said, we are resizing this. Like the main purpose of what we are trying to do, creating empty arrays, is just to save the resized images into this empty arrays. So we are trying to do that for the training. We are trying to do that for the training images. So we are specifying the path, and then we are looping through the IDs. That is the 4,000 IDs which we've read from our computer, from our system. Over here, we've already done that. So we have the names of the image, of the seismic images and their corresponding patches. So we are trying to load the images right now and then resize it into 64 by 64 image patch. So that's what this particular cell is doing. We are specifying the image. So we are making use of this function, which is from, I think it's from Keras, to load the image from this folder, and then with their corresponding IDs. So that's what this function is doing. So we are loading the images and then the max, and then you can see the process of reading the files from the system memory into this particular notebook. So like over here, we can see the X string, which is adding the X string, the empty arrays which we've created, which is adding each of those resized images, and then the max, which is also doing the same thing. So checking the shapes should still have the same shape, but then now we can now check the values. Like previously, we just have empty arrays just as a kind of placeholder to hold these images, and then we can now see the values. For example, previously we extracted the first image in that array. So right here now, since we've actually loaded the image data itself, we can now see these values. Like I said, grayscale images have values from 0 to 255, where 0 represents like very dark pixel, while 255 is actually a white pixel, and then the variations in between. So you can see the values for each pixels in this particular image, and then so we can just see that like that. We can't fully get the whole values from the whole image, but then we can see that we've properly loaded our images. So this is the first image in our training data set, and then this is the second image. You can see that that's different pixels values like that. So up to the 4,000 image, I think that should be 39 actually, due to the way Python list index works. So okay, that's just that loading the image. So we've been able to load the training data set. So now let's just quality check to see if everything looks fine. So we are trying to load, we are trying to visualize those image patches just like we've done previously. You know, we've now downsampled from the initial 101 pixel dimensions to 64 by 64. So let's just visualize that, making use of this particular code. So while you are using the random to just randomly select a particular, image train ID, and then to display the image corresponding to that ID, and then the corresponding marks also. So while you can see the dimension is now at like the pixel dimension, the width and the height is 64 by 64. Why this okay, from the marks also we could see that this region is corresponding to, so this part has been labeled as the region with salt, and from here also we could also see that. So we could keep running this just to see more examples. So in this particular example, we do not have any, from the marks, we can see that we do not have any salt regions in this particular example. And then over here, we can see a very tiny marks. And if you observe this closer, oops, I think I should have maximized. Okay, if you observe this closer, we can see, like over here, we can see the pixels actually, like these small blocks of codes. So there are 64 pixels, each having each of their own values. So every value here that's every region in this particular image that is black has a value of 0, while the white part has a value of 255. That is the pixel image size. But in the real sense, since we've denoted our marks as booleans or not, so all these other values, values that has a value of 0, which is the black patches, they're actually the regions that has no sort, and boolean values of false. So we can see this example and just loading it more. No sort no sort in this particular example, and then just like that. So we've been able to load the training data set images and their corresponding patches. So we should also recite the test images. No, we don't have marks for the text images, so we are just only going to recite the text images provided. So the text images provided, we have 18,000 images. So over here, we're just trying to do what we did with the training images, where we resized, and doing that for the test images. So there are about 18,000 images. So I think it takes just less than a minute to complete, to get that completed. So all what we've been doing so far is just to resize our image before feeding it, before training the models, before feeding it into the unit architecture. So once the resize is done, I think the preparation is actually done, the data preparation, and then can proceed into the model training. So now we've been able to load the image patches. We could also visualize the same way we did for the training images. Let's just copy that to just visualize some of the examples. So remember, the training, the text images is saved as X test. So we have to reformat some of these. So the test IDs, and then the you can just see some of the examples. Remember, we don't have the marks for the test images, the test data set, because that's actually what we are trying to predict. So we are trying to train our models on the trained images and the patches, and then making use of that trained model to find regions in these seismic test seismic patches, to get the test the salt regions and regions that does not correspond to salt. So now this is just quality checking the shape of our arrays, and then proceeding to the unit model architecture. Okay, I think let's take a break here. Let's take a 10 minutes break and be back after that. All right. Okay. So we are back from the break. Thanks for staying in. And then, okay, before the break, we looked at preparing, that's resizing the images from the initial 101 by 101 pixel sizes to 64 by 64 pixel size. So we've been able to properly prepare. We'll be able to properly prepare our training data sets and also the training data set, which compose of the seismic image patches and then also their corresponding marks, which serves as a kind of their labels. And also we'll also be able to resize the text images, about 18,000 of them. So now moving to the unit architecture, like you said, this is just like the same image which we use to okay. Before then, let me check the Mentimeter if there are any questions. Okay, wow, there are a lot of questions here. So the first question, the code shows loading of images, but can you load the entire 3D seismic then start classifying? Actually, we can load the entire 3D seismic patches, but the way we are going to do that is at the end of this notebook, like I said, we're looking at how you can't load the entire, though that's actually a different workflow actually. To do something like that, instead of using actual patches, we could get the data in form of the inlines. So say for example, you have a data about 500 inlines, and then 500 inlines. You could train your models on some set of inlines and then predict on another set of inlines. So like that, you've been able to properly classify your 3D seismic yeah 3D seismic data. So you can do it like that rather than getting patches from the whole volume. So okay, this someone is asking where we can get the tutorial notebooks. So apologies, I think the link that is to the repo is not in the YouTube description. But after this tutorial, we'll try to get that on the description link. So the repo is actually available. Let me open that. Okay, yeah. So I'm just getting information that the link is on the YouTube description. So you just have to check there and download the notebooks. That is the GitHub repo from there. So how did you create the marks? So actually, I didn't create the marks, but the marks was provided by TGS for the competition. So from, if you ask me, I would think the marks were created maybe using the software and then also human interpreters to ensure that they get the proper marks for the corresponding images. So I think a lot of processing, a lot of interpretation must have actually gone into the process of classifying the source regions in the particular seismic data which those image patches were extracted from, and then the marks were now generated using the same format in which the image patches was extracted. Okay, someone said, can you explain the for loop when loading the images? That is the Q times 2 and then the J. So sorry, we are not coding from scratch because there's actually not enough time to code from scratch. So I'm just going to look at that now to understand what you're trying to say. Okay, for the training images when we try to, okay, let me look at the question again. Can you explain the for loop when loading the images? Q times 2 and then the J. Q times 2 and then the J. I don't think I can find that. I can find that here. But what this particular for loop is doing is that it's looping through like we said, we've gotten the training IDs, that is 4,000 of them. So it's looping through each of it. Like in this particular block of code now, we're just trying to resize the images and store them into these empty arrays. That is the X train and Y train and the X test. So we are getting each of those images from the folder on the system. So the images are located in this particular folder. And then each of these images have their IDs. Like you said, we've also extracted the IDs, making use of this particular code to get the IDs. And these are just examples of the IDs. So each of the images have a particular name, that is file name attached to it. So these are just some of the examples. So after getting the IDs, that's 4,000 of them. This particular for loop is looping through the IDs, taking each ID one by one to load the image. So over here we have the images actually being loaded. So the image actually, okay, let's show an example for that. So we are trying to load a particular image. So the way that works is by using load image, and then we specify the image file, the file name and the directory actually. So let me check on the directory which I'm currently working from. So So this is the directory I'm working from, and in this particular directory, sorry about that. In this particular directory, we have the images. I don't know if I should do this like this. Yeah. So we have the image folders, and then we also have, we have an image folder. So this is not what we are talking about. So we have the training folder, which contains the folders for the images and then the marks also. So in this particular folder, we have 4,000 images in this folder. So we'll see some examples. So it's taking a while to load due to the size of files in this particular file. So we can see all these images, about 4,000 of them, each having their own unique identifier. That is their file names. And just loading, we can see for the first example which you open, you can see the actual image. I'm trying to go back now. Okay. So we can see that example. Same thing with every other image in this particular folder, and same thing with the marks also. So I think we've probably identified that we have two folders, that is for the train, the images and their corresponding marks, 4,000 images and 4,000 corresponding marks. So now we are trying to load, let's try to load the particular image. So we are trying to get the file name for that image. So I'm just trying to explain what is happening in that for loop. So let's just copy this file name so we can load this particular image rather than using the for loop. So we are loading a single image now, making use of. So this is the function, I think, from Keras, which is used for loading images. So the parts, we specify the parts. That is the file name. So we know we are currently in this location, and then our image is in the training folder, and then in the images folder. So now we can now properly load this particular image. So let's load this image and see what the output is. So the output should be a numpy array actually. Okay, it actually loaded the image. So the function is actually used for loading the image. So over here, we are trying to look through the IDs of those images, 4,000 of everything like that, and to load each image. So after we've been able to load the image with some image load ID and their corresponding IDs, remember this ID is referring to the IDs of the training images. So it picks one ID, then close the image, then perform this operation, the resizing operations, then goes to the for loop again, picks the next image in that saved variable for the train IDs. It picks it, loads the second image up to the last image like that. So after loading the image, so we can work with this actual image data. So we need to convert it to a numpy array. Like I said, images are just like a matrix representing. Images can be represented by a matrix of values, because each pixels in this image correspond as a particular value that makes us be able to see this image on this particular system screen. So after loading the image, it was converted into a numpy array, making use of this line of code. So let's just do that. So let's call this image is equals to, and then converting it into an array. So image is equals to ing. So this is another function which we imported, array, and then passing this image into the folder now. So let's call the image. So you can see that, like I said, it's just an array of values. So that's what that line of those lines of that for loop is actually doing. So it's looping through the images, and then it is resizing them. So the resize operation is made use of this function, which we also imported, part of our requirements when we started the notebooks. So we resize it into these particular shapes, 4x64. And before then, we've loaded the particular image and save it as image. So you can actually check the shape of this image. Like we said, the initial shape was 101 by 101, and even the image channel, I think is giving it a channel of 3. So we also converted it into one channel, because it's a grayscale image. So that's what this particular for loop is doing. It's resizing each of those images into 64 by 64 pixel dimensions. So I think I've answered. I don't know if I properly got that. So I think I've answered that. So how can we get the images of your course? So like I said, I mentioned that previously, you can go to the homepage of, so this is also in the, so this information is also on the GitHub, it's also on the YouTube description. So when you go to the GitHub, you get how you can get this particular data set. So this data set is not available on the GitHub because I was not able to push the old data sets into using Git to push it, because I think Git has a core limit of 100 megabytes, and then the data is more than that, so it was not, I was not able to do that. But then you could just download the data set from this particular homepage. So just download the competitions data. So it's a zip file. It has the training images and the images and marks, and also the test images and marks like that. So which is the best way to merge or segment it to your patches in order to have entire slice of block in your code? So actually, I think yeah, this is a good question, and it's a very good question actually, and I'm actually working on a way in which we could do this. So I think the way that could work is, for example, at the end of the class, we show how we can extract patches from a seismic volume, and then use the train model to predict maybe the salts in that particular region. So I think the way that could be work is when you're trying to extract your patches, based on the inlines and the X lines. So when you're extracting it, you automatically give your patches a file name corresponding to their corresponding inlines and X line, and then making use of the like the pixel, the center pixel. You can denote if a particular portion is a particular pixel. A particular image has is a salt image or not, and then you can now make use of that information. I don't know. I think there's a way you can convert that information into a kind of segue data, because if you said, like, if you actually you have to approach it like your marks, your predicted marks are actually what you're supposed to plot. So you get your marks, and then you plot it according to the inlines and then the X lines. But I don't know how you could do that in Python so that you can get a full, it's a seismic volumes, a very large data. It's not something you can just plot in Python. So I think there's a way you can make use of the pixel, though I'm still looking into that. There's a way you can make use of the center pixel to get a particular image marks is sort or not, and then plotting that information or putting that information in kind of segue data, and then properly visualizing it maybe in a software or something like that. Okay, someone said, is there any specific reason the images were resized to 64 by 64? So the reason why the image were just resized to 64 by 64 is because, first of all, I'm working on my system, and then because due to computational resources, if the images were left as 101 like that, it might take a lot of time to resize, because we are dealing with a large data, because 64 by 64 and 101 by 101, though they are still the same image, a 64 by 64 image has been downsampled, the size has been reduced. That is, the size has actually been reduced on your system, and it has a lower storage capacity. So when you're trying to resize a lot of images like that, if you have a very large dimension, it might take a lot of time to do that. But actually 64 by 64, 101 by 101, you see the same images. So we are just resizing to get things faster. So what about using other values? So you could use other values. For example, you could use 120 by 128, and if you have the time to when you're trying to resize, is also good. And also remember, this is a competition. Yeah, this is a competition, and you could try different things to improve your model. So 64 by 64 might actually not. That's just an assumption. I haven't tried that. Might not really improve your model. And then when you resize to 120 by 128, and then feed it to your unit architecture, your CNN, it might actually improve the model might actually be able to learn more things from that particular image size. So it's up to you actually. So nice question. So if you are asked to use an image for both train and test, and no max is provided, unsupervised, please clarify how to divide the image into train and test. So, okay, let me read this again. If you're asked to use an image for both train and test, and no max is provided, unsupervised, please clarify how to how to divide the image into train and test. So I think, okay, so what you're asking for is like an unsupervised machine learning application. Like I said, this is a supervised machine learning. You have the image patches and their corresponding marks. So for an unsupervised machine learning, so we actually don't have max, and we can just say we just have training data set, because there's nothing we can train and test and evaluate our model. So just like you have a train data set. So when you have a data set like that, you're just classifying something, and there's actually no way for you to evaluate, because the purpose of the test data set is for evaluation. Yeah, it's for evaluation. So when you don't have test, you don't have marks like that, I don't think there's a way you can evaluate, and you're just having a set of data, which you could call the train data set or the test data set. So there's actually no image diffusion, because there's actually no way you can evaluate your model. I don't know if I got what you're trying to say, but if not, you could just maybe after the webinar, you could reach out, could discuss more on this, maybe on LinkedIn. So yeah, nice question. Thank you. So is normalizing a compulsory step during image preparation? I don't think it's a compulsory step. I don't think so. If I get your question, normalizing, so you're just trying to normalize the pixel. Yeah, the pixels, that is their values, the pixel values. So I don't think it's actually compulsory, and I don't think I didn't do that. We didn't do that in this tutorial. But we could read more on this to see how the effect of normalizing a particular data set. Though in the model architecture, I think for the units there's a particular layer, the lambda layer, which I think a kind of normalizing. I won't call it normalizing. No, it doesn't normalize. No normalization was done. But we could read more on that, if normalizing could make a result better or not. So next question: what type of image segmentation this code follows? I don't know if I got that, but like we mentioned, two different types of image segmentation problem: the semantic segmentation and the instance segmentation. So semantic segmentation, you're just trying to identify particular image types in an image. While for the instance segmentation, you're detecting different objects, which could also be the same type of object. So this particular one is a semantic segmentation workflow, because we're just trying to identify which regions of a particular image is that sort or not. Because if we say we should use instance segmentation, so it's going to be classifying each of those pixels. That's, for example, a particular source region might be classifying each of those pixels as different things, and then when the output is coming out, we'll be getting something that is not even interpreted, because like we have different objects, though it's sort, but it's like we have different values for different things. So this is actually semantic. This is a semantic workflow. Yeah. So someone said in my code, why loading I used Q and J. I can't find Q and J. Let me check that. Okay, this Q and J is just, for a for loop you could use any value actually. So let's just, I think maybe this is okay. This is J. So we are just trying to perform a particular operation. So we could just say, okay, for ID. So this J was actually referring to the IDs in this particular for loop. So we are just looping through these IDs, and then we are just denoting each of those IDs as maybe J. We could use for ID, or let's just call it for file name. Let's call it file name. Okay, we're making use of the enumerate function. So we could just say for index, then comma image name, which is also like file name in enumerate IDs. I think you could go back to the basics of Python, how for loops work, to properly understand what is happening here. So that's what we're just trying to do. So it's just actual normal variables, and it's not anything special like that. So that's just the way for loops work. You could specify a particular variable to to denote the operation you're trying to do. So is it better to deal with gray or colored images? Which one is more practical? I actually think, yeah, for seismic data, it's better to use grayscale images, because when you use colored images, when we get to the patches of extraction, we show examples on how a colored image on variation could actually change. It could mean a lot of things. So by just using black and white, you can properly see the features and could properly decode the features. But when you start using colored images, there's actually there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information present already. So I feel, yeah, from practicality, grayscale images is actually is preferable. So have you considered registering the images beforehand in case they have offsets, rotation, shifts? I don't understand or fully get this question. Have you considered registering the images? Registering in cases they are in case they have offsets, rotation, shifts on different side. Sorry, I don't get this question. I'm sorry about that. Why? Okay. Why did you take less images for training and more images for testing? Actually, yeah, actually, it should be the other way around. I think this is a question for the organizers, that is on TGS. But I think it's actually interesting, whereby we just have few. I don't know if I would say 4,000 images is a few number of images, but then that might actually be due to, I don't know, they are trying to say how limited data for training works and a lot of other data set like that. So actually they have a lot of images. For them to make use of 18,000 images, that's it, they have the corresponding test to see. Yeah, they have the corresponding test. So I think it's just a kind of way to restrict the participants or even the models itself. Like by just giving them few data set, they want them to get a very good machine learning model that can identify such regions. So when you now introduce, it's a competition. When you've gotten the best of models from this competition, then you can now feed this model with even more data set. That is the 18,000 more data set, and see how it works. So actually, they'll get the even better model by inputting more images into it. So the last question: if you leave your email, I can share an interesting answer. Yeah, I would really like that. Thank you. I'll leave my email at the end of this session, or you could just, okay, let me just type out my email. Okay, we'll type it in our notebook. So let's just go back to the now. So if you're watching, this is my email. If you need to reach out at the end of this this webinar, this is my email. All right, so we've been able to prepare our data set. Now let's go to the model architecture, which is the unit model. Like we said, a unit or model consists of two parts: the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So the left-hand side is the contracting part, and yeah, is the decoding part. So it decodes information, making use of the feature maps, the convolutional layers, and then the max pooling layers, and then also the activation functions in between as kind of within layers in between. And then it encodes the information. And then while the right hand side is the expansive part of the decoding part, which tries to get parts of these feature maps into a single, into the actual image, the predicted image. And like we have it in neural networks, we have such that when we are training the models, first of all, you send all your training images into the network. For example, this unit network, you send it into it, and the unit networks tries to predict the marks for that image. And remember in mind, it has the corresponding marks. So when you've made a prediction for a particular image, it has the marks, and then it observes and compares this mark, making use of some statistical metrics, like it computes the loss. That's it. When you say something loss, you're referring to it as like it's trying to get the wrong predictions which you made. That is for the pixels. And then by computing the loss, it propagates this loss into the model architecture, and then it updates the weights. So with each input you are passing into it, and with each epoch, so an epoch refers to as the number of times which you are training your models with the old sample training images which you have. So with each epoch, when you are training your model, the better your model is. So making use of this unit architecture, and this is, so we have the code over here for that. So like we have over here. So over here, what we're trying to do is we are trying to write the code for this network. We have the input layer, which is the image type over here, which we have. So we are going to pass in the images, each of those images, into this network, and then get the corresponding output. Over here, we can see that the output is just two layers. So it's either sort, either sort or no sort. So in addition to the output layer, we also have a sigmoid activation function. So the sigmoid activation function is what actually determines if it is sort or not, based on the probabilities of those pixels, the pixels values. So where was I? Okay, we are trying to define this architecture in the code form actually. And actually this the way we do that, remember I said we make use of filters, convolutional filters, to extract feature maps from the images. And so the way that works is that they've actually like I said, we are making use of Keras, which is a deep learning workflow. So Keras is a deep learning workflow that helps you to make train your models with deep learning applications. So you don't actually have to write all these filters. You don't have to write all these filters and all these mathematical operations to do deep learning or machine learning actually. So all these convolutional layers, they already have the filters in it already, and then it's denoted by all these. So this is the should I call it, this is the method or a class from Keras, which helps you to specify a particular convolutional layer. But before then, we need to specify our input. So our unit model takes in images as input. So you need to specify the dimension, the type of inputs. So over here, we just have we just have the code representing this particular unit structure. So we have the input specifying the image height. So we specify the image height, then the width, and also the image channel. Like I mentioned previously, we have this lambda. We also have this lambda class, which takes in the input shape as an operand. Should I call it an operand to operate? And also we also have this convolutional layers. So these convolutional layers, they actually what extract the feature maps from the images. So we have a 2D convolutional layer which extracts 2D feature maps from the input images. So right here we just run that, and then so like I said, okay, for example, we have two different convolutional layers in this. We are sending an input of one image channel, and then the image size is 572 by 572. That is the pixel size. So after convolving this particular image, we now have 64 feature maps, and then the size has actually reduced to 570 by 570. So the way feature, okay, let me go back to my slide to properly explain this. Just keep in mind, we initially have a image size of 572 by 572, and now after going through the convolutional layers, now has a new size of 570 by 570. I don't want us to mistake this as a polling layer, because it is not. So I'll just go back to my presentation to explain what that is. Like I said, you make use of these filters. You make use of these filters to extract feature maps from a particular image, and then I don't think we'll be able to fully explain how convolutions work. But convolution is just a kind of let's call it multiplication operation in frequency domain. You are just trying to perform a kind of multiplication, but now in frequency domain. So don't let's go in depth into what convolution is. But let's just have it in mind. It's just a way in which we try to extract information on a particular image. And for me, I already explained what a particular a particular feature map is. So for example, we have an image. So this might be an image of a car in this dimension like this. And then we made use of the feature maps, the filters to get these feature maps, which is representing different important features or what properly represents this car. So over here we have a particular marks, which will be convolved all over this image, and then get the corresponding marks. So for a particular convolutional operation, so we have this input image, and then we have this marks. So the way it works is referred to as something we call stride. So you are going to place this particular filter marks, this marks all over this image, so that by placing it on this first 3x3 dimension over here, you get a particular value. If you observe closely, we can see there's in this center is corresponding to a value of 1. So when you make use of this particular marks on this image, you could be getting an output of 4.5. That is 4.5 4.5 from this particular convolutional operation. Then after getting that, so that's just like the feature value for this particular feature map. Then you move this this marks, you move it like to the right, just one pixel block away. Then perform the same convolutional operation, get a value for it, and then up to the end, up to the last the end of the image like that. So when you perform something like that, you could see this particular example is starting the feature map from the output from 4.5, and then it gets it up to this point. So what is happening over here so is that we are not able to use these filter marks to get information on this last part, because it's just like we're having just 2 rows of columns, and then we have 3x3 feature maps, so we are not able to do the convolution for just these two columns. So when you have the feature map, is actually going to stop. It's going to stop here. Pardon me, I don't have a very good presentation for explaining this. So yeah, when you perform the convolution, you'll be able to fill up the feature values for this particular feature map, so that you now have the information in just this block of code. And now you're now missing 2 pixel values. That is 1 pixel row over here and another pixel row over here, and then same for the width and also for the height. So yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that's happening. Sorry. So that's a similar thing that is happening over here. So we have initial image size of 572 by 572, but then after the convolution, due to the padding, due to the stride, we are not able to fully get the initial size, but we still have a feature map representing information on that particular image. So also there's a way to resolve this by specifying a padding value actually, but we won't go deeply. We won't go into that right now. So like I said, in this particular unit architecture, a particular input, which is, for example, the first input with just a one channel image, has been passed into this convolutional layer, and now we have 64 feature maps. So this 64 feature maps now is going to be passed into the next convolutional, or into the next block, and then the convolutional operations are also going to work on it. So for each input, you have an input to pass into the convolutional layer. Then the output from that convolutional layer is also passed into the next block, which is made up of the convolutional layers and the polling layers. So that's what we have over here. After defining the input, you pass it into the lambda function. Then you pass that particular input, which has been saved as S. You also pass it into the next convolutional layer. You could see we define the convolutional layer over here, and then we are passing the input, that is the output from a previous layer, into it, and just like that. But I don't want us to worry about this. If we'll be using this, don't let us worry about this particular block of code, because even I myself, I copied this. I copied this particular block of code, which is the unit architecture. So anytime you want to use you are trying to perform image segmentation, you really don't need to write or know this code of it, but just know what they're trying to do. So from the comment over here, you could see I indicated the contrastive part, which is this part to encode the information, encode the image and get the feature maps information on that. So we have that particular layer from, so we have that particular layer from here to here, which is the encoding part. And then after that, we also have the decoding part, which decodes those feature maps into the actual image before the model calculates the loss and propagates this the loss, and then updates the network with, so the model could network could learn properly from all the inputs which has been passed into it. So over here we have the output layer, which is just, so we just have the output layer, which is for this particular example a classification, a binary classification, which is just a two which is just a two value classification, should I call it challenge or problem now? So yeah, we also specify the activation. So the activation function for the output is the sigmoid, and the way the sigmoid function works, so is either yes or no. It's actually just for binary classification. At the moment we're working with a multi-class classification, we would have been making use of the softmax activation function. So right here we just specify the loss. So the loss is just a kind of metric which helps the models to learn, and yeah, it calculates the loss after each prediction, and then, like I said, updates the weights and updates the model weights. So we'll be monitoring the accuracy of our model, making use of the pixel accuracy. And then the optimizer is, we are making use of the ADA optimizer. So the ADA optimizer is just a kind of, in neural networks actually you have what is called optimization. So the optimization is actually the way in which any type of neural networks actually learn and updates the network with. Okay, so we've been able to define, let's just define our model over here. So we're able to define the unit model architecture and model summary, just to check, after we've compiled the model, to just see how the network is. So right here we can see some information on the params for each of the layers. So the params is just referring to as the weights. So like I said, the neural network is actually made up of different layers, and these layers are actually made up of different layers, different neurons, which represent like information or different mathematical operations to make the neural network learn from training your data. So these params are just some like values, or they're just values that you can update when training your model. So after defining the functional, we can now train our model. But before then, let's specify some model parameters, hyperparameters. So hyperparameters are just some like conditions or values to when you're trying to train your model, to monitor the training process, and also to kind of to update your model, to make your model work and learn very well from the data set. So over here we are specifying a particular Elin stopping and then the patience of 5. So when our model stop improving, maybe after 5 epoch, we want the model to stop training. And then the model checkpoints. So the model checkpoint, we're just trying to save the model, like the best models. So that's what we do over here. And then we specify the number of epochs. So for this particular example, we're making use of just 15 epochs. But in the recent, you could make use of 100 epochs, and just to get your model to train properly. And then the batch size. So the batch size just refers to the number of samples which you want to go into your network for a given epoch. So we're making use of 0.2. Now we are training with 4,000 data sets, but now we are taking 20% of these 4,000 data sets to validate our model before finally predicting on the test data set. So this validation data set which you are getting is actually what the model uses to learn and see how good our training process is performing. So after that, we are going to train our model. So now this might take some time. So now we've been what's happening over here is that we're sending images into the model with the different batch size created. So for a particular epoch now, like at least 8 images are being sent into the network at a given time. So to train the model. And then we can see how the loss is decreasing. That is the binary cross entropy loss is reducing. and also the accuracy is increasing with each image which is being fed into the model. So the more images are passing into it, the more the model, the network is able to learn from it, and the higher the accuracy is on subsequent inputs. So this might take a lot of time. So let's give it a minute before we go to the question and answer section. So it's going to do that for the whole for 15 times. So it takes all the 4,000 images through the network, calculates the loss, and then does that for 15 different times to get the best model. So over here you can see the training loss and the accuracy. So this is the accuracy on the first epoch. That's on the training data set. That's 3,200. Remember we splitted the data sets and made use of 20 for validation. So this is the validation accuracy. That is the 20% which we splitted. It was 75% pixel accuracy. Sorry. So let's go to the question and answer. Why the model keeps on training. Okay. So there's a new question. Does the feature map of number of features obtained after the convolution correspond to the number of times the convolution? Yeah. Yes, it is. So I think what's happening for the feature maps, for particular feature maps which you get, is actually the number of times convolution was done. I said there are different filters. So when you're performing the convolution, you are using different filters actually. So when we have 64, for example, 64 feature maps out of a particular image, initially it was just a single image, a 2D image. Then when you perform 64 different convolutions on it, you're now getting 64 different information, 64 different 2D feature maps on that. So it's just the number of times the convolution was done on a given image. So different convolution was done on that particular image, different filters. So that's why we have different features like that. But if you use the same filter 64 different times, convolve it on the particular input image, you still be getting the same feature maps. So it's always reasonable to use different filters to get different feature maps. So yeah, nice question. So we are making use of the pixel accuracy as the performance metrics, and we are just doing that because of just this tutorial to show what we are trying to do. But a better metric to use would have been I think there's a metric asked by the competitors, like the organizers. I think the mean IOU. So the mean IOU metric works in such that rather than just taking in the pixel accuracy to measure how the model is performing, because the pixel accuracy is actually not a good metric, though the metric is actually good, but there's a better one, which is the mean IOU. And I think the way the mean IOU, it takes in consideration of how good your pixel classification is actually. So let me check. Let's just check that to get more information on that. I think it should be under rules. No. Okay. Evaluation. So yeah, we have the competition evaluation metric. I'm looking for the mean IOU. So the IOU of a proposed set of object pixels. So this is how the matrix for the competition is, and I actually think it's a better matrix. But for simplicity, we are making use of the pixel accuracy for this particular workflow. So you can read more on the mean IOU and how it's computed. So yeah, nice question. So do you recommend a list of readings or Facies classification? I don't know if I get this question. If you could be more descriptive, please. You recommend a list of readings? Oh, sorry, I don't understand this question. Okay, I don't know if you mean like maybe a list of maybe articles or articles or blog posts or maybe papers we could read for size fascist classification. Yes, I think we can do that after this webinar. Yeah. So let's go back to our model training. So it's actually still training, and let's just observe how that is going. So we'll be making use of the validation accuracy to monitor how this thing is doing. And then when the validation loss, that's when it decreases. So when we are getting like lesser errors, we are saving the model into this particular finding. We are using this finding to save the model. So just like when our model is getting improved, we are saving that particular model so that we can make use of it. So where you can see information in that. After the first epoch, after the first epoch, you can see that okay, for the second epoch, the validation accuracy is now 83.9% from initial 75%. Then this third epoch, the accuracy didn't get improved. I think 83.84. While for the fourth epoch, the accuracy increased to 85%, just like that. More data like the more times you are training the model, the more the model is learning from it. So our model is supposed to train for 15 different epochs. But I think we should just stop it here because it's taking a lot of time. Or maybe we should let's have a 5 minutes break and we'll be back after the model has completed training. So let's take a 10 minutes break. All right, so welcome back. So we are on the last epoch. You can see from the initial 75%, 83% accuracy, pixel accuracy on the test data sets. You can now see on the last epoch now we're having a accuracy of, that's on the 14th epoch, we're having accuracy of 91%. So I think our model was doing well enough. And even when we increase this epoch to maybe like 100, we should be getting even better results. So our model keeps getting saved when the loss gets decreased. That is, the loss from each epoch gets decreased. So before we go into the making predictions with the saved model, we can just let's take the question and answer section again. So we have a question: do we have control over the kinds of convolution filters that are being used? Yes, we have control over the types of filters we are using, and also control over the type of padding which we want. Like I said, the padding is just like a type of way in which you convolve and get maybe information on those. When the kernel when the filter size is not able to cover the entire image input. So we have control over the filter convolutional filters which we are using. Let's look at an example of that now. So our model has finished training and has been saved to our computer memory. So let's go back to the model architecture, that is for the unit model. So right here, okay. So over here you could see that for the contrastive part, actually we are convolving we are encoding this information. We are getting more feature maps, so we are making use of this convolutional conv2v filters, and then the activation functions in between. We could change the activation functions. We could change the padding, and also this particular 3x3 is just the kernel size. That is the filter size. We could decide to make use of 4x4, 4x. Oops, this is not right. This is not working. I don't. Is it? Oops, there's an error with that. I think I'm getting an issue with my keyboard. Let me check that here. Okay, sorry about that. So we could change the filter size. So from the 3x3 filter size, we could use the 4x4 filter size, and then we're already changing the filter size. So we could check more information on this particular. Okay, so for this particular convolutional layer now, we are encoding it, we are generating more feature maps. When you look at the decoding part now, you can see we are using a different filter actually. So in this part, we are transposing it. So from the 128 feature maps which we've created, we are now kind of like, should I say, we are compressing or decomposing these feature maps into a smaller set. So these are actually different types of feature convolutional filters which you could apply. And also you could also change the kernel size, the activation functions in between these filters, and also the padding could also change that. How to max velocity and amplitude data. Sorry, I don't know. I don't get that. I don't think I've done something on that. But I would like to look into that if we could reach out using my email or LinkedIn after this, so we could get more information on this and what you mean and how it could be done. So now we've been able to train our model. Let's make use of the saved model, the trained model, to make predictions. So over here we are just loading the saved model. So let's check the system. Sorry, there's an issue with, okay. Okay, over here now we can see the saved model, saved as TGS salt model 15 just saved on 4 minutes ago. So the last best model was saved on just 12 minutes ago. So now we're going to call this, we're going to load the saved model to make the predictions. Oops, that's just made an error with that. So now we're going to load the model, make use of this load function from Keras, and then make the predictions on the train and validation and test data sets. So while here we are creating validation, I don't think there's actually a need for that. So after loading the model, we are creating train and validation data sets. So we are making use of the first 80% of the data as the train data sets, and also the validation data set as 20% of the actual train data set itself. So our model was trained on this 4,000 images, and then we just want to see how the model perform on this data set which it has seen before going to predictions on data sets which wasn't introduced into the training operation. Okay, right here. So we are also having this loop by predicting, making use of the model that has been trained to predict the train images, and let's just give it some time. So it has predicted for the it has made predictions for the train data set, the first 80%, and also predictions on the last 20% from the train data set. And also now it's making predictions on the 180,000 test data sets. So this one is quite it's larger than the previous ones. So let's just give it some time. Should be done in a minute. So when that is done, you can see over here we are specifying the threshold prediction. Like we said, this is a binary classification. So the values are just we are trying to get either true or false, whether it is sound or not. Did I just say sound? No, whether it is salt or not. Sorry about that. So you are making use of this particular block of code. So if that particular value is greater than 0.5, if it's greater than 0.5, we are calling it salt. That is the probabilities of the outputs. So we check one of the outputs now to see how the predicted marks are. So the predictions are done both for the train, validation, and test data sets. So now we can see the predicted train values. So the values are actually between the zeros and 1, where 0 indicates salts or regions of salt or no salt. Let me comment this out. So over here we are just specifying the threshold of predictions for the probabilities. So this is also another important factor when you are trying to maybe improve your model from the competition. You could use different threshold values and see how they compare. But they are, in the actual sense, I think 0.5 is a good threshold value to use, because just like if it's greater than 0.5, it's already closer to 1, and if it's lesser than 0.5, it's closer to 0. So is that a yes or no? So now checking the values for this, now we can see it has already made use of this threshold value to assign the actual pixel value. So either it's a salt or not. So I think these 0 values actually correspond to regions of no salt, which will be black. Yeah, it will be black from our image from our marks rather. While anywhere that we have a value of 1 would be white, indicating salt regions. So rather than looping through it, we are just going to visualize the results. So while we are just checking the shape of the predicted images, and now we are trying to visualize the predicted train samples, which so it's actually expected that since our model has seen all these images, it should do a very good job at actually predicting the marks. So right here we are visualizing the actual seismic image. There's actually salt in this. Yeah, there's actually salt in this region, and you can also see that in our predicted marks. So this output, this marks is actually what is needed by for the competition by TGS. So this marks will actually be encoded back into an actual, in like a NumPy array, and then will be submitted. So let's just check on a few more examples before we go into how we could extract image patches. So this one is showing a lot of sort patch. We actually don't know what the actual marks looks like, so we are not sure what's is happening here. So these are just some examples on that. So we've been able to make use of seismic patches, and their corresponding marks to train the model and make predictions on test patches. But then let's just look at the typical how we can extract our own patches from seismic volume. So we're making use of, before then, let's see if we have any questions. Okay, no questions. Okay, so we're making use of a particular data set. It's an open source data set, the F3 seismic survey from the North Sea. So over here, for example, we have this 3D seismic volume. Let's check information on this particular volume. I think from the inline read, you can see there are about 651 inlines and then 951 cross lines, and also the depth slice. So we'll be loading this particular data set. I have it installed, downloaded on my system. We'll be loading this data set and just visualizing. So this is one of the inlines. And we can see, for example, we can see this on particular salt dome. So say, for example, we now have a trained model that is able to identify salt patches. We are able to identify salt regions from an image data, so that we can now kind of extract this, or we can just make use of the inlines, get all the inlines, and then feed it into a machine learning, into the pre-trained model, and then try to see what the output is going to be, rather than the seismic patches. But then over here, we are just trying to see how we can. So in this example, okay, I think that's okay. In this example, we are just going to load the data set and see how it looks like in Python. So rather, in this case, we are not having seismic data sets unloaded for us, and we are just loading the data sets ourselves. So the way you load seismic data in Python is there's a open source module for that, which is called Segio. I think it was developed by Equinor. So you could make use of this module, this package Segio to load seismic data and then to work on it. So we're installing this. We are making use of a cloud platform Collab to load this data sets. So like I said, we are going to load this data set according to the inlines. Yeah. So it's the Dutch government F3 data set, which we just visualized in this. Yeah, which we just checked. So that's what we are trying to load in this particular. I think my screen is kind of small. So apologies for that. So yeah, we are loading this data set, and yeah, it's a 3D seismic volume, like we've seen. We've seen the number of inlines it has, the X lines. It's taking a bit of time, I think, maybe due to the network. Okay. So after that, we just check on the shape. You can see it has 651, like we said, 651 inlines, X lines, and the depth slice, the Z slice. So right here, we're just doing just transposing the axis and then checking the information. So over here now, we can now check. So for example, we are trying to visualize a particular inline. Like we said, we have 651 inlines. I'm making use of, initially someone mentioned something about colored images. So we could make use of matplotlib the same map argument to specify if we want a colored image. In this case, seismic. But before then, seismic. So we can see how this information is actually being presented. So this is for a particular inline 1. Let's check for a second a different inline, or inline 0. We could see, so we could just see this information like that. I think I already answered the question that it's always better to use grayscale images. So right here we have different let's just go back to this. So yeah, we have the inlines like this, and then we can make use of the trained machine learning model, feed this particular image. So we could just save this particular image, this particular inline, save it to our computer memory, and then get all the inlines from that particular survey, the F3 data set, and then use the pre-trained model to just see how it maps the salt region in this particular data set. Well, I don't think we will do that. What I was trying to show is how we could extract our own patches from seismic survey. So I was doing a recent work recently on that. So okay, please. So yeah, we'll also be sharing these notebooks on how to extract seismic patches using Segio and other things like that. So in this particular workflow, like I was mentioning before, for you to do something like this, you need to for each image, you must have specified the X line range, the depth slice range, and then for a particular inline, and then you just extract the seismic image patches. So this is just a code to automate that particular process. So in this particular code, you are going through each of the inlines, and for a particular inline, you're extracting the image patches according to like 64 X line ranges, and then 64 depth slice, and then you're outputting it. So like I said, this is a recent work which I did to extract image patches for a similar work which I'm currently working on. And then this is the output of that image. So the output is actually 72 by 72 image patches. Yeah, just 72 by 72 image patches. So this particular image patches could be fed into the trained model, and then see how it classifies the salt regions. But that is not done in this particular webinar, and we just explore and see how that works, how our pre-trained model works. So yes, I think we are done with, I think we've covered what we are supposed to. And thanks everyone for staying and joining this session. I'll just see if there are any questions before I could you share your last script that you said? I'm going to do that. It's currently not on the GitHub repository, but I'll do that between today and tomorrow. Yes. All right. So I think we are done, and then I don't know if I'm missing any other thing. I think we've covered the main part of it. And then to also improve your model. Let me go back to the presentation. So for that, for this particular webinar, we looked at some salt segmentation, so that either yes or no, either salt or there's no salt. But apart from that, so that's just a binary classification. We'd also have a kind of challenge where we need to classify more than a single Facies. So this particular example is from a recent seg competition. So a recent seg competition, and the competition has kind of been open source in a particular platform. So they're trying to identify different seismic Facies using the slices. So in this case, they were not extracting actual patches, but they were training on different seismic slices and then predicting on the different test slice. So this is the competition homepage. So these are the 6 different Facies that was provided, or that is present in that particular seismic survey. And just like we did it for the salt segmentation, a similar thing could be done. The only difference now is just that from our code from our code, rather than specifying true and false, we need to find a way to denote. We need to find a way to denote the labels while loading the data sets. Sorry. Remember when we created the empty arrays, we made use of the Boolean to denote the values of the marks. But the way we would have done this for a multi-class classification is properly finding a values to denote each of those classes, maybe from like 0 to 5. And the second another thing we need to look out for is when we are defining the units architecture. So from the unit architecture, we can see so the inputs is still the same. It's still the same thing, and then the rest of the layers. But the only difference is the output. So instead of having a sigmoid activation function, we'll be having a softmax activation function because we are predicting more than two classes. So it outputs on different probabilities of those classes, of those fasces, rather than just two. And also, I think another main difference would be that rather than using a single image channel, because our max is actually a colored yeah our max is a colored image. So if you use a black and white, you might not be able to differentiate a particular fashion from a different one. So we'll be making use of a colored format for the maximum representation, and that's when the image channel changes. So rather than passing one as the image channel in this case, we'll be passing three, representing the three RGB values as the color channels. So I think that's just the similarities on how to go about it. So yeah, I think I'm done. Thanks everyone for joining this, and I hope we've been able to learn at least one new thing or the other. So yeah, I'm done. Oh, sorry. I think there are some more questions. So could you? Okay, I think I answered this. Oh, thank you. Can we produce the image in cube or 3D in 3D form? You know, the seismic survey is a 3D data set itself. But I don't think we can visualize it in 3D. Though I think there'll be a way we could visualize. I'm not yeah, I don't think I can visualize the 3D survey in Python, but there are actually ways we could do that in Python also. So could we produce the image in cube or 3D form? Or am I not getting this question? So the image could be produced in a 3D form if you have the X line range, the inline and the inline range, and also the depth slice. That's for the seismic patches which I showed. I don't know about the one from TGS because I didn't extract the data set, so I don't know where the inline ranges are coming from. So yeah. So I think that's done. So thank you everyone.
All right, it's been an exciting time with Olawale Ibrahim on the grand finale of the GeoPython week. It's an honor to have you, sir, and we hope
Thank you.
the geoscience community will pick up this knowledge and work on it and extend on it. On behalf of everyone and the team at Flosky Technologies, I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Data Space Nigeria. I want to also say thank you to all the instructors and see you this time next year. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you everyone.